Hi, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's Q&A Cafe, Inventory Management with MRP, Material Requirement Planning, and SAP Business One, with your lovely host, Shannon Kennedy. As per usual, I'm Catherine, and I'll be facilitating today. We are going to be recording this session, so everyone will remain on mute, but if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat or questions box, and we'll answer them towards the end of the presentation. Quick note that we are not going to be having a Q&A Cafe next week, but our next one will be again with the lovely Shannon on Wednesday, September the 8th at our typical time of 12 p.m. Mountain. That's going to be Resolve Overview for SAP Business One. You will not want to miss that one. All right, so without further ado, I will hand it over to Shannon.
Thanks everyone for joining us today for our SAP Business One Requirements and Planning Module Overview. The SAP Business One MRP module, as it's also known, enables you to plan material requirements for a manufacturing or procurement process based upon your evaluation of existing inventory, your demand, or changes in your supplier's demand. Those could include certain planning parameters such as lead time determinations from your suppliers, as well as specific holiday planning. The first thing that we're going to take a look at is the setup of our inventory items in regard to minimum quantities and planning so that we can check out how we add our lead times in for our forecast process. You see in our SAP Business One main menu, we have our MRP option here. This will include the options that we'll be reviewing today, which are our forecasts, our MRP or our Material Requirement Planning Wizard, as well as our order recommendation, which allows us to automatically create your purchase orders in SAP Business One. So let's take a look at one of our item masters that we'll be working with in regard to forecasting today. Simply going to open up my SAP item master, which opens in Find mode. And I'm going to select one of my items that I know I will be utilizing for forecasting. These include our insignia items or our headphone accessory items. Once I open up this item, I'm going to simply go to our inventory data here, and you'll notice that in your warehouse line here, the line that's in bold is your default warehouse. You can also set up information in regard to forecasting and minimum quantities to be held within your warehouse per warehouse. Today, we'll only be working with our main Long Island warehouse as seen here. So if we just simply look at our line here, double click to open up our information, it's going to show us our in-stock, committed, ordered, and minimum inventory level here, which is 600. Utilizing your minimum inventory level is what's going to allow you to forecast properly for fast-moving items or items that you need a lot of. The reason being that you normally would like to keep some sort of safety stock balance inside your warehouse. Now, the second area we'll be looking at is on our Planning Data tab. Our planning data allows you to select your item so that we can select how it will be planned, which is utilizing our MRP. For specific items like slow-moving items, you may want to select none here, which means that it will be kept out of your forecasting process. Our procurement option is buy for this item specifically. You can also use your forecasting and your MRP module options for manufacturing items. So if you're making the items, you can also forecast your need for items that you will be manufacturing in-house. We can set order multiples if you have a specific order multiple that you have to order your items in. For example, if you need to order in a minimum case quantity of 25, you can put your order multiple of 25 here. You can also put information regarding your minimum order quantity, and all of this data will be taken into account when we're forecasting. Our lead time is very important when you're forecasting. The lead time means that's how long it takes from ordering that item for you to have it in stock in your warehouse so that you can sell it to your customers. For our lead time of our item here, I have it set for 10 days. That means from start to finish, it will take 10 days for those items to come, which will be taken into account during our forecasting so that we don't run out of our fast-moving items. Now you can set up each of your items with this information, and you can also use the data transfer workbench to update bulk items with the planning data here, as well as your inventory data. This will allow you to update all of your items at one time versus manually going in and updating like you see here. Now that we've taken a look at our item, let's go into our MRP and look at our forecasts. You have the option to forecast by item group, or by multiple items. Now, the reason I'm saying that you have multiple options in your forecasting is because you can simply name your forecast here and add your items one by one. Or if you have a group of items, say you're utilizing your SAP Business One item groups within your item master record, you can name that here. For my example, I'm going to use my insignia items. And I'm going to call it my Shannon forecast. Now, once I enter in my new forecast, which I'm just going to exit out of my screen here so that I can enter in a new forecast, first being in SAP Business One's Find mode. Your screen here automatically updates in Find mode. So here we go. I'm just going to enter in my insignia items, and I'm going to call it my Shannon forecast. And now I can utilize your SAP Find button here to add specific items manually. I can also use my item group here, double click to sort, and then select multiple items to add to my items in my forecast. Or what I can do is simply generate a forecast and then choose my items. Your start and your end date can be entered manually, but they will default to approximately a 3-month start to end date here. So as you see, it's selecting August to December. So it's approximately 3 to 4 months. However, you can utilize forecast dates for up to 3 years. What I'm going to do is I'm simply going to utilize from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. You also have an option to utilize daily forecasting, weekly, or monthly. For our option here, I'm going to utilize monthly. Utilizing your generate forecast option here, if I just select my drop-down caret, I have 2 options. I have a basic forecast, which is available and able to be used in your SQL as well as your HANA databases, which will give us basic information in regard to our forecasting and fill in our forecast sheet here. Or you can utilize intelligent forecasting. The intelligent forecasting utilizes HANA Analytics in order to give you 2 options and actually graph out your forecast for you. Those 2 options include your linear, which includes trends and seasonality information, and triple exponential, which gives more weight to more recent time periods for your items specifically in the history. So let's utilize our intelligent forecast first. Once we choose our option here, now what I can do is I can go in and I can simply select one of my item groups, which I know from my earlier item, I would like to utilize headphone accessories. So let's just search through our items here and select my headphone accessories. You can also select a to and from item, or simply put the same item in both of these options here, and you can run the forecast for one item at a time. Our calculation methods that I mentioned are seen here. This one is our linear regression, and this one is our triple exponential. You can also allow the system to select for you utilizing automatic selection. We can forecast using our sales history based upon our sales orders, our deliveries, or our AR invoices. I'm going to utilize our sales order delivery, which is our default here. So now once I click forecast, it will run our information and give me a forecast based upon my headphone accessory group of items. Now, if I enlarge the screen just a bit, I can see that my forecast value utilizes forecast time in buckets, which is 12 months, which is what I asked the system to do, from 1/1/21 to 12/31/21. And you'll notice that it's forecasting every item within my headphone accessories group here. And here are our months. Now, within each of these lines, you can actually make updates as well and change any of the information that you see here manually. So if you know something specific, maybe in regard to a seasonality trend in a specific item, or you know that an item is being discontinued, you can feel free to make an update within your forecast here to say 0. That will enable that when you run your MRP wizard, that a purchase order will not be created for an item that's going to be discontinued. Now you see in the bottom of our screen here, it shows us our analytic view or our graph view of our forecast. Anything you see in orange here is going to show you your forecast information. And if you highlight or hover above any of your dots, it will show you the month as well as the quantity needed for each item that you have highlighted here. Now you can save this as a template for your forecast, or you can simply hit save and close and it will close your screen here. What I'm going to do is click save and close. And then the system automatically updates your forecast screen here with the items you selected, as well as the quantities needed. We utilize our expansion button here. You can see more information on your items as well, as that will maximize your screen. You can also feel free to make changes here to any of your items and their quantities, like I mentioned before. As in all screens for standard SAP Business One, anything with a golden arrow can be drilled into directly from this screen also. So now, based upon this information, let's just take a look at our basic forecast. We open up our basic forecast window. It allows you to select by item, where you would enter in your item number here. It allows you to select by preferred vendor and also your warehouse. You'll see that we can also select by our group here, as we did earlier. You can generate forecasts for your warehouses and select specific warehouses here, which we will only be utilizing our New York, Long Island general warehouse. So we'll uncheck our California warehouse and make sure that our New York warehouse is the only one selected. If I open up my advanced settings here, it will allow us to choose what we're basing our forecast on in regard to our sales history. If I select my sales history here, I only have one option here, which is sales orders. You can also utilize your delivery and AR invoices by selecting the tab below that. And then you can simply tell the system when you want to look from and to in regard to your dates for your forecasts. I'm going to be utilizing our sales orders here. And then you have an option to select your simple average or your monthly history for your items. I'm going to select my monthly history here and click OK. Now you see that I have a red error here because the system still wants me to give it information regarding what dates I'm looking for my forecast. Simply going to type in my 1/1/21 and it should default to my 12/31/21 based upon my forecast window. Now I'll click here. The system will give you an option to cancel or keep going along with your forecast. Want to click OK so that it will generate my forecast information. And then based upon that information, it will update that screen here. Whereas our intelligent forecast allows us to see the planning data in one screen as well as in a graph view. So you see if we open up our screen again, we'll see some of the exact same information as we saw earlier. Now I want to be sure that I save my forecast so that I can utilize that forecast at a later date. You can always come in and update your forecast by adding or deleting your line items or your rows. And you can also delete your entire forecast should you not need it any longer. I'm going to add that forecast to the system. And now that I have that forecast, I'll be able to select it within our MRP wizard. Our MRP wizard is what allows us to utilize your material requirements planning within the system so that we get a recommendation report. That recommendation report is what prompts SAP Business One to automatically create your procurement documents or your purchase orders in terms of your forecasting. This is going to save you a lot of time because you won't have to manually look at your inventory for specific items and create those POs manually. They will utilize information if you have in your item master data regarding your preferred vendor. It will create the POs based upon those preferred vendors. If you don't have a preferred vendor chosen, then you will have to do a little bit of manual interference in regard to creating those POs based upon your forecast. So that way you tell the system what vendor you'd like to order those items from. So now that we've opened up our MRP wizard, I'm going to select next, and it's going to show me all of the MRP wizard we've run in the past. Now you can feel free to utilize an existing scenario here and run this again. What that will do is it will utilize all of the data in this scenario in order to run the recommendation wizard for you and for those items specifically again. What we're going to do is create a new scenario because we want to create a new scenario based upon the new forecast that we just created. So our scenario, I'm going to name Shannon's forecast. And under my descriptions, I'm going to put Shannon's insignia items. Now, once I hit next, it's going to allow me to select some information that the MRP wizard will be looking at. The planning horizon will be the start date and end date to our forecast and our planning. I'm going to utilize the same dates that I used in our forecast, which is the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So now it's going to utilize 365 days, and it's going to give us data in periods of 1 day at a time. You also have the option to see data within weeks and months. Let's change that to months, and then we'll see our planning length horizon also updates to months versus days. Our consider holidays for production and purchase items is a nice option in case you're working with companies that are outside of your region. For example, if you're working inside the US, but some of your vendors are in Canada, they may have off different holidays than you do. So that information is very important because that could determine whether or not those items are going to be inside your warehouse on time or if they'll be delayed due to that holiday. You can also select the option to display items with no requirements, which means that items will show even though they don't have any existing sales documents or demand documents. We can display specific selected items instead of all of the items within the group. And we can also have the option to run a simulation. So now before going any further, let's just save our scenario so that we can use it again in the future. Now on to our next selection here. We can do selected items, which allows you to add specific items to this MRP wizard run, or we can select all items. I'm going to leave it on all items here because we're going to select the forecast. The forecast is what's going to tell the system what items I want to look at. So now in our inventory data source, I want to make sure I'm only using my default warehouse that we've been using for our forecasting, which is our New York, Long Island warehouse. I'm simply going to unselect our additional warehouses here. And in doing so, I'm going to make sure that I'm getting the information that I want and that I'm not seeing multiple warehouses. Okay. So now I'm including our existing inventory. I'm including our demand inventory, as well as our supply documents. Now let's click Next. Now I have to add some information in regard to our time range. So that means that I can include information within our planning horizon, which is our 12 months. And I can also choose to include all historical data, which means it will take into account the data prior to those 12 months as well. Your sources of demand and supply to be included will be any of your documents inside of SAP Business One. That means your purchase requests, quotes, orders, and blanket purchase agreements, which are your supply documents, and your demand documents, which include your sales quotes, sales orders, blanket agreements, as well as production orders. So for our options here, I'm going to let the default take over and utilize our purchase orders and our blanket purchase agreements, as well as our sales orders, sales blanket agreements, and production orders for our items. Underneath your inventory level, you can use your required inventory, minimum, maximum, or a range of your minimum maximum. For my option, I'm simply going to select minimum because I know that I have specific items set with a minimum order quantity or a minimum inventory quantity. Now, under forecast, I want to utilize the forecast that we just created. So inside of our forecasts here, we'll get to see the items that we're working with in our Shannon's forecast, which is our insignia items here. Now, for our recommendations, you can have the recommendation report tell the system to create purchase requests, which then can be approved and created to purchase orders inside the system, or you can have it fully create your purchase orders. For our examples here, I'd like it to create purchase orders in general. Now, before we move on to our last step of running our wizard, I'm going to save my scenario again so that it saves all of the options that we've chosen thus far. Now let's click Run. Once we click Run, the system runs through the information and the items that we've working with, and it will give you information regarding the items and their recommended purchase orders that should be created based upon the demand in the system, as well as the minimum quantity needed in inventory. So here is our preview of our MRP run results for 1/1/21 till the end of the year. And if we look at our recommendations here, this is what's going to show us our items from our item group, which are within our forecast. It's going to show us the quantities, the pricing, the vendor that's associated with the items, as well as our warehouses and our quantities in inventory. Now you'll notice that certain lines, like line 1, you see in red. The reason that you see this in red is because that is letting us know that inventory for that order is past due. That's why you see in our exception column here, past due for both lines in red. That's simply a flag for you when utilizing your MRP wizard to note to the system and to your customers and to your team that something may be late for your customers because you don't have the proper inventory in stock to fulfill that need. Now I can save my recommendations here and then click Finish. Once I click Finish, my screen will automatically close. Order recommendations here, which will show us all of our order recommendations that we just saw and we ran in our MRP wizard. So now we're going to select our order type, which is our purchase order, our scenario, which is Shannon's forecast. We can select our due date and release date, item or item groups, which will select our same item group that we've been working with, which is our headphone accessories here. And you can also select specific vendors. For us, I'm going to leave our vendors blank because I want to see all of our vendors. Now let's click OK. Here you're seeing your purchase orders, the items, and the quantities needed, as well as the due dates for all of the items from our recommendation report here. So now in order to create these purchase orders, I simply have to click Create for all of these purchase orders here. And then I'm going to select Update. Once I select Update, the system will automatically create purchase orders or procurement documents for the items needed based upon our forecasts. Inside this screen, you'll see the number of purchase orders created. Now, the system is telling us that only one purchase order was created. That's because the items in question all have the same preferred vendor, which means that one purchase order for all of the items' recommended quantities was created for one vendor. Now I'll exit out of my screen here. And if we go in and take a look at our purchasing and our purchase orders, we should be able to see the newly created purchase order inside of SAP Business One. Simply utilizing my SAP back button here, I'm going to enter back, and you'll see that our brand new purchase order was automatically created here. Now, if you have the system to set up to also automate the process of sending this purchase order automatically to the vendor, the system will also do that for you utilizing your systems and messages, as well as your SBO mailer. So now just a quick note about your SAP Business One default dashboard options, because you do have some options, especially if you're the team member working mainly in inventory management and MRP, to select what dashboard you want here. So if I select my folder option here, I have the option, which I have on my dashboard now, to select my inventory template dashboard. What this template dashboard includes is your inventory value, your outbound inventory value, your inventory turnover, as well as your inventory management process and inbound inventory value. If I scroll down just a little bit further, you'll also see that I have some reports that are defaulted in from SAP Business One in regarding to our inventory. This is going to allow you to very quickly and easily assess information regarding your inventory turnover by your item group, as well as the last 12 months. You'll also note that I've added some shortcuts to this dashboard. Utilizing SAP Business One common functions allows you to drag and drop any shortcuts that you'd like to add directly to your dashboard. For me, because I'm working mainly with my MRP, I've added my forecasts, my MRP wizard, and my order recommendations. These shortcuts will allow me to open up these screens directly from my dashboard instead of having to utilize your SAP Business One menu. What that will also allow us to do is open up our screen just a bit so that we don't have to have our menu here on our side view. You can also create custom reports and save them directly to your dashboard here as well. So in regard to SAP Business One and MRP planning, straight out of the box, SAP gives you a lot of options to manage your warehouses and your items, as well as item groups, taking into account seasonal trends, possible delays, as well as long or short lead times, and enables you to manage your materials requirements planning for production as well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Don't forget to join us in 2 weeks. Again, friendly reminder that we don't have a Q&A cafe next week, but it'll be again in 2 weeks on September the 8th already, again with our Shannon, and that is going to be the Resolve overview for SAP Business One. Thanks so much, Shannon, for another fantastic cafe, and thanks everybody for attending. We look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks.